Sorry.
Okay. Oh no, I have to be honest.
I know.
And so that will start this year, 2023. We already have a lot of interest and a lot of those funds earmarked already. So we're really excited. The need is out there, so we just need to like keep up with the funding. We held 3 field days and a small acreage workshop. Barbara and I started a YouTube series, Out Again with Jen, and conversations with the farmer. Those are fun, and we're going to be adding more and more to them this coming year. We wanted to try to figure out what was going on in the areas, what kind of information people wanted, and then work to deliver that in a fun and educational way. I go on WCMP Pine City Radio most months. There's a couple of months where they kind of get really busy, but yeah, WCMP Pine City Radio, country music, excellent. And reached, well, now, so this is what I did. The partners also did other fantastic work, but because of reporting timing, I don't have those metrics. So the partnership went way beyond this. This is just what I did. Reached 617 farmers through field days, mailings, phone, in person, and emails. Planned and implemented soil health practices on 880 acres this year. Planned a lot more acres, but we didn't have them all implemented this year. A lot of them are starting next year for no-till, reduced till, things like that. And this is what I'm excited about. So for our comprehensive plan, we have pollution reduction goals. We also have that in our WBIF plan, the 21 and our 22 plan. We can only count what was funded through WBIF funds when we report to Bowser. But for all the projects that I worked on, minus the NRCS projects, because I didn't run the calculations for them, we reduced total phosphorus loads by 1,143 pounds, total suspended solids by a little over 1,000 tons, and reduced erosion by 1,895 tons this year. That was the first year since
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
It's really exciting. So, I mean, you guys were right on cue when you guys were planning and thinking about what was needed in this area for the partnership. Yeah, this is exactly it. The need is there, the want is there, coming together really nicely. And developing networks with area ag industry, organizations, and emerging farmers. Had the opportunity to meet with a lot of different staff organizations, things like that, to continue to build our network, have farther reach. It's really exciting. Yeah, there's a lot of great things that we can work together on. Developed and provided staff soil health training workshop. Also leveraged an additional almost 37,000 in local funds for increased implementation beyond the WBIF, beyond federal. So that's watershed district funds and Washington Conservation District funds that we were able to also bring in to fund soil health practices. And then also secured, I mean, it's not a huge amount of money and certainly not worth the headache. 4,500 for outreach and education to help be able to implement our field days, because the cost of everything. Oh, I'm planning meetings right now. Ooh.
You're not serving omelets, are you? Because
I can't.
no eggs.
No price, so we're really trying to keep it realistic while being able to provide quality events too. And we're partnering with Wisconsin farmer-led councils for a field day coming up in February.
15.
Just got an email from Tara. They have 65 RSVPs already. Yes. So we're partnering, we're leveraging. Yeah. That's, some of my favorite pictures. So I think Oh, I don't remember if we brought that up with this committee before, but soil undies. What soil scientists, scoring people, we have this, it's an actual test, it's a white cotton test. It's this, like 6x6 piece of white cotton cloth that you weigh, you bury it in the soil for X amount of time, you dig it back up, weigh it again to determine how much decomposition was completed. And that gives you a correlation to the activity in your soils by your soil critters. Well, how fun is that? So years ago, we determined, well, let's use white cotton undies because it gets people's attention. So we did that, let's see, 4 farmers within Lance was one of them. So we're really proud that the producers let us try that out on different management practices in the basin. So that's the picture.
What would have been really nice is if we'd had kind of the before photos when they were watching the underwear go in, the skepticism on their face versus the amount of joy you see on the faces with
Yeah.
the deteriorated underwear.
Yep.
Weirdly enough, they all let me keep them. They didn't want to keep them themselves. So
Excuse me, how long were they buried? I missed that.
Play for those.
Kristen, you said you missed that. Yeah, the farmers didn't want to keep them, so they let Jen keep the soiled undies.
But I mean, how long were they actually buried in the ground?
How long? 8 weeks?
I went 7. It's normally 6, but I went 7 this year because of the drought.
7 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. And you can do it at home.
Yep, I did. I was inspired.
it.
I did it at home. I made some videos before videos, and then got a call. I did an interview on WCCO radio about the soil your undies experiment. So it got us some earned media too. It was kind of a fun way. But yeah.
So, and it's a fun way you can do it on your own ground. You can do it in your yard, your garden, the field, whatever. It's fun to have a comparison. And then to talk about, well, this is what, Taco Tuesdays will bring you. Sometimes I say, because I make a display of it too. We say, oh, we're going to McDonald's, this is going to Taco Bell. This is homemade cooking, the fresh food. People get a kick out of it. Oh, a lot of times at events, the husband and wife will walk by, and the husband or wife will ask, "Oh, how'd you get a pair of my husband's underwear to put out there?" Oh, they love it. Good conversation. So then for non-structural practices within WBIF, the ag and urban are together. So for 21 to 23, we had $200,000 split evenly in that. In 23 to 25, we have just over 100,000, and that's for the urban street sweeping program. Because we were able to secure that additional 200,000, we took the non-structural ag 100,000 and put it into implementing other projects because there was a high need. So for WBIF 21 for Bowser reporting, there's a lot of cut-ups of figures. We installed 335.7 acres of cover crops this fall. 6 landowners, Chisago, Pine, Washington counties. We still have some funds available that we're looking to plan for 2023. Officially spent 52,000 with 48,000 remaining, but an additional 36,000 are earmarked. We just don't have the contract official because and then we have 12,000 remaining, but we have no problem spending that. It's been hard to not spend all of this money to really prioritize it. So, and our 2-year total phosphorus reduction goal was 400 pounds. Within the fall of one growing season, we reduced it by 682. So about 1.5 times the goal.
Yeah.
That was because of putting them in South Washington County, where it's very hilly. That's where we got the biggest bang for our buck for erosion reduction. All acres are great though.
Okay. Oh, yep. I think you might have covered all of these.
Oh, this is for this year.
Okay.
No.
Oh, this is upcoming. These are upcoming plans for 2023.
Yep. So we'll continue what we've been doing. Promote existing partner programs, try to develop some more. We're going to do the 3 field days. Well, yeah, 3 field days for large scale farmers. We're also holding 3 winter meetings. And then for smaller scale, we're looking at minimum 1 field day, and we are hosting 2 virtual workshops this winter, one for beef production and one for small livestock production and marketing. We're working with extension staff to put those on, so we're utilizing that partnership. We're getting something out of it. We are. I'll keep speaking on the radio program, doing the videos with Barbara, and working on building up that farmer web page for the Lower St. Croix partnership to provide more information and resources.
All right. Yeah, you're dismissed now. So this is kind of pairing together 2 different sections of the grant that we get from the state, and one was to fund Jen's position, and then another was to pay for those non-structural activities. We also had funds allocated in there for large-scale structural ag projects. And you can see that we completed 3 during the past grant. One large one, the McQuaid Ravine Stabilization in South Washington Watershed District, and then 2 smaller projects that were up in Pine County on Rock Lake. So total phosphorus reduction, just slightly under what our goal was. Moving on, we had a chunk of funds. Let me just move this so you can see. A chunk of funds for structural urban BMPs. And we, very similar to the last one, had one really large project and one fairly small project. So we have a boat launch sediment reduction project happening in Carnegie Marine St. Croix Watershed District, a $10,000 project, and then a very large Trout Brook Stream restoration project happening. This is at Afton Alps, right by Afton State Park down in the South Washington Watershed District. And so once again, coming in just slightly under what our phosphorus reduction goal was. Wetland restoration, we have 3 projects completed and one that is scheduled for the coming year, so is basically in progress. And there is kind of a funny thing in terms of reporting in when we're setting our phosphorus reduction goals for reporting to the state. We can only report out on the reduction that happened to a target water body. So we do have this one project that happened at the Goose Lake wetland at the Carnegie Marine St. Croix Watershed District that isn't counted towards our total phosphorus reduction. But you can see that it was still a fairly high quality project that happened and is very beneficial for that lake. Okay, so then this is where I get to turn things over again to Barbara, who is our second staff person that we were able to hire on with funding through the state. And Barbara was able to start in 2021.
Correct.
All right.
And so in many ways, I act as a liaison for both Jennifer's ag outreach program, as well as being able to expand the MREP, the East Metro Water Resources Education Program that Angie has spearheaded at the Washington Conservation District for the past 15 years, and move that into more of a basin-wide. And so in many ways, I get to straddle both worlds in working with these fantastic women as we march toward our water quality goals. And so over this past year, it was very much, hi, everybody.
I know, I was like, that way they can see you.
And so my focus has been getting to know the players and really looking at being able to talk with our target audiences of lakeshore owners, being able to meet and talk with farmers, being able to meet with our local elected officials and decision makers. And so over this past year, I met a lot with lake associations to promote both partner programming as well as goals of the partnership when it comes to shoreline initiatives. organizing that first workshop at the winery. And so this is kind of a patterned after the workshop on the water that South Washington has been doing for the last 10 years, and being able to move it to a more northward location, just given the fact that we have this partnership that includes both metro and non-metro counties. And so obviously you're going to have different priorities across those counties. And so being able to have kind of two distinct meetings that has more of a local flavor is something that is of importance. We were able to get Chisago County into the Adopt a Drain program. And so we are officially able to track and measure where those drains are being adopted, being able to operate a bit more of a strategic, like, hey, it looks like there's a lot of storm drains here. Who can we partner with here in order to get more drains adopted? Being able to work a lot of community events. And so that was part of it too, is just still really wanting to get a better feel of what people are talking about, where do people go, and up especially in the northern part of the basin, I've had a really great time partnering with a lot of different community events and just kind of talking to people about native plants, adopting drains, the non-structural ag program, talking about the enhanced street sweeping program, and just being able to kind of help with the execution of the ag field days and running the small ag workshop, being able to create a host of different videos. And that is one loud demand that I've heard a lot from people, that we want more videos. A lot of people are recognizing that video is the medium when you really want to start getting out to people. And so being able to kind of ramp up those offerings over this next year. I started my own blog, and so Angie runs her very successful East Metro Water blog. I also started the Nick Points blog, which harkens back to my days as a geomorphologist. Nick Points represents positions on the landscape where you have a lot of instability, a lot of change. And I feel that in many ways, our work is at that too. We see that there are a lot of these environmental tipping points, being able to report on them, being able to get people aware of them, and figuring out ways, how do we want those Nick points to go? And then even just in our own lives, how we decide and prioritize what's important. We're all kind of in that continual weighing mode, and which way you gonna go. So it's been a fun way of just being able to tell some of the stories of folks that I've met along the way. So you should subscribe. Just saying. Because a lot of what the MREP program is able to deliver also very much feeds into a lot of the education milestones that we have for the larger comprehensive plan. It's been absolutely a kick just to work with Angie. And so she has developed a really amazing suite of workshops and just really being able to have a great formulas for how to structure things. And so people come, right? That's always the thing when you're throwing out an event, you're just hoping that people come. Her voice is very, very respected in Washington County, starting to move that northward, and also add in my voice as well. When it comes to this year, there's a lot on there. We're going to be working more with lakeshore owners. We have shoreline virtual workshops. We're going to try to do some neighborhood show and tell events up in Chisago. We're looking at a small lakes webinar that we're hoping to work on in Isanti County, since we have a lot of natural environment lakes in that section of the lower St. Croix watershed. Really building partnerships, so trying to build up ways that we could have more volunteer capacity. And so we have people who are able to go to events and talk about some of the programs and just the topics of why people should care. We're really trying to push the message that conservation is cool. And so being able to utilize those voices where we're able to. Being able to continue to offer Jen support, looking forward to being able to make more videos with her, and being able to run some events. We've talked about doing a prairie restoration walk series. So we're hoping to do that with Mary Jo Youngbauer from Chisago Soil and Water on her own land this coming spring, summer, and fall. Being able to help with outreach support, working a lot more with communities and adopting MIDS, the minimal impact design standards. And so we're kicking off with Jay Michaels from EOR to ramp up those efforts. And just so getting people to understand that there are definitely ways that you can protect your water quality, even as you're trying to develop. And so, yeah. More blogs, more newspaper articles, more events, more fun.
More.
Fun. Yes.
I mentioned, if you want to mention too, someone within this committee also has been great at participating
Yeah.
hosted a field day and also allowed some videos to be completed.
You know, I don't want to call out anybody named Lance Peterson, but you know, there is somebody named Lance Peterson who has been enormously helpful and we've really appreciated working with.
You hear that, Lance?
I hear that. Thank you.
Okay, so just a couple more things that we've been able to do over the past 2 years with state grant funding. Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District conducted an internal analysis of phosphorus loading within the lake in Forest Lake. And I saw that that was probably instrumental in being able to get a Clean Water Fund grant in this most recent cycle. And we have also one of the key things that this group really wanted to do on the front end of our 10-year planning process or 10-year plan implementation process was to be able to fill in the gaps in where we have data for targeting and prioritizing the work that we're doing. So you can see that they spent quite a bit of time updating some of these sub-watershed tools and protocols, doing some prioritization and delineation of contributing subcatchments up in Pine County in the Sunrise River. We were able to pull together a tree canopy assessment protocol, which is now being put into place for 16 cities throughout the watershed. And then there's a couple more sub-watershed studies that are happening for Rock Lake, Sunrise River, and then Northern Washington County. So I think we're nearing the end of the project updates, but just to mention that we do have 16 cities where they are putting together targeted enhanced street sweeping plans, because we've identified that this is one of the most cost-effective ways to reduce water pollution in urban developed areas. So North Branch, Rush City, Wyoming, Linwood Township, and then you can see a whole list of small cities and townships that we have in Washington County. Once they have these plans in place, then there are funds that are kind of earmarked for the next grant cycle where they can get then annual incentive payments to account for the fact that they'll be doing extra sweeping to just kind of help cover the cost of that. All right, so Emily, are there any other things from the 2022 annual report that you want to mention before we kind of segue into why Sunrise River WMO left, and also what additional policies and practices the group is recommending?
Nothing further to add. Thanks for that really comprehensive presentation, Angie.
Yeah, I pulled pretty much directly from your annual report, so really you did it all. I just added pictures. All right.
Leading us off from Sunrise River.
Sure, I can. Is there any comments or discussion that people have on the Sunrise River? Is there anything that you want me to?
I don't have any additional information, you know, above and beyond the memo, which was shared in the, you know, in the packet for day and that I sent out back in December. But I did want to open it up. I mean, I guess if policy committee members want to have any conversation about that, or if you want to fold conversation into, you know, the discussion about policies moving forward.
Well, I'll begin first, and I'm wondering, does their departure have any impact on our agreement with the Board of Soil and Water Resources on the funding and the money that comes into? None at all?
No, so this is Barb from Bowser for people online. Basically, metro entities are optional for these partnerships. And because the geographic area is still covered by ANOCA, Conservation District, who still partner, there can be ways for that work to still get done in that geographic area of the watershed. So that would be my answer.
All right. Thank you. That was the one question I had, is whether that had any impact. So obviously, this is an important area of the Lower St. Croix partnership that we're working on, and I think there's a lot of opportunities within the Sunrise River area to do, you know, water quality work. So this does not have any impact on that at all.
No, I think in talking to another Conservation District staff, and Jamie is on the line, so maybe Jamie Sherman can speak to that too, like, that is a priority, that area is a priority in your plan, and you guys do have goals associated with that, so if there are ways for them to bring up, projects in that, geographic area, the group could move forward and could fund implementation in that area.
Thank you for that. You know, there obviously is the letter that was sent out with the packet along with the resolution that was passed by the Sunrise River WMO. There were some issues identified, I think is maybe a fair way to say it, within the letter and the resolution. And I think Tom is prepared maybe to talk a little bit about some of those issues and how we might address the concerns that were shared. So,
Do you want to set up my computer to drive, or do you want me to just forward for you?
Yes,
As needed.
works for me, Angie, if you want to just. forward the
Okay.
slide, that's totally
Yep,
fine.
just let me know.
Before I get started, does anybody want a paper copy of the policy? I have about 6 of them. Sorry, I don't have enough for everybody, but. Okay.
Actually, I'm thinking so that people at home can see you, why don't you come sit here? Because then they'll be able to see you on my camera. So it's not a disembodied voice.
All right. Hi, everybody who's joining us remotely. Okay, so I think just to start off, one way that I found helpful to think about the Sunrise River letter was just to kind of boil down some of the points that were brought up in them. And I think you can really kind of condense it down to 3 main points. First was a concern about JPC versus JPE, which is something that we've kind of talked about before. And for those of you that are new, that's really kind of summarizing, or not summarizing, but a comment on how the organization, the LSC, is structured. So a JPC means Joint Powers Collaborative, and JPE is a Joint Powers Entity. There's some differences in how both are structured. Essentially, a collaborative is what we're operating as now. An entity would require a few more administrative steps. I believe that incorporates the use of legal counsel, staff, and I think there's insurance that is also tied to it, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So that's one of the points that was brought up in the letter. A second was regarding a decision or how funding structure came about in the last policy committee meeting, and I believe that was in September. Basically, are you locked out? Oh, sorry, I shut the door on him too. My apologies there. So basically, the decision to fund using fiscal year or using funds that extended over a fiscal year. And Craig, you might have to help me a little bit with the terminology here. But my understanding is basically that the concern involved allocating funds from a future fiscal year before they had actually been received by the Lower St. Croix. And that was one of the decisions that was in September. And then the third point was about conflict of interest, about committee members voting on their own projects and not abstaining from those votes. So I'm sorry for the rambling kind of summary, but this kind of ties well into the policy discussion that we're about to have. But like I said at the beginning, my name is Tom Dietrich. I'm a water resource planner with Washington County, and I'm in public health and environment. So before the commission this afternoon is the draft project evaluation and approval process, and that's for your consideration and endorsement. So this is a document that's been routed through all of the Lower St. Croix teams. So that includes the planning team, the steering committee, and then staff as well. So
I've been
click.
using the mouse to roll down for some reason.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Thanks, Angie. So this afternoon, we're just going to be covering a few brief slides, and it's really just going to be a high-level overview of the policy we've kind of built here. So we'll be covering some background and purpose, the calendar that's been developed, the written policy and the graphic, and then finally we'll have some opportunity for feedback and discussion at the end of the presentation here. But the main focus of what I'm going to be talking about is really the why behind how we structured the document, why we constructed the policies in a certain way, and on kind of our thoughts behind it. I do want to be respectful of the committee's time, so I won't be focusing on the actual content that we developed. But if you do have any questions, feedback, or comments on anything that was included in the policy, there will be time for that at the end. Okay. So just a little bit on background and purpose here. So the way that we kind of designed these three different documents is that they function together. And really they're intended to be reviewed annually, so they're not static. But basically the calendar is going to be a summary of how the project submission deadlines and review dates work. The process graphic is going to be kind of like the Cliff Notes version of the longer policy document. And then the actual written policy details all aspects of the review schedule, the process, and its related procedures. Excuse me. So the policy documents were all developed as part of the committee's request at the September 26th meeting. So from that request and using kind of several other existing sources that the Lower St. Croix already had, we developed kind of all of these items that are before the committee this evening. So the intention is really to kind of lay out the process, the procedures, the exceptions, and the policies that we were looking at, and in how we're considering projects that are asking for WBIF funds. Sorry. So the calendar and process graphic are really to convey the process and timeline in a simple and easy to digest fashion. And then in developing all of these documents, we kind of had a few different sources that we were pulling from, like I said at the top. That includes the appendix to the annual plan of work. The appendix to the 2022-23 annual plan of work, the September 26th meeting minutes, and then the review process graphic was actually updated from what Barbara already had in existence. So kind of getting into the calendar. So at its core, the calendar really has two project categories that it breaks up. So those are projects that are greater than or equal to $50,000 or less than $50,000. Projects that are greater than or equal to $50,000 are going to be reviewed once annually in April by the planning committee or policy committee. Thank you. And then projects that are less than $50,000 are going to be reviewed 3 times annually by the steering committee. So there's quite a few more dates on the calendar, but at its core, it kind of really boils down to those key dates that I just mentioned. The other notes that we made in the policy is that a call for projects or a notice will be sent out to partners 60 days in advance of the deadline. So those notices will be provided by Becca at Washington Conservation District. And the reason that the calendar looks a little bit busier is that because those deadlines, those 60 days, and those calls for projects are going to be marked on the calendar, and they also earmark steering committee meetings as well. So just a note too that steering committee review is required for a project to advance to the policy committee. So that's one of the reasons why there's a few more items populated on the calendar. And then there's also fast track considerations that are written into the longer form policy. And there's also an appeals process too. So there are options if we need to ever be nimble with timelines or if there's a project that can't wait. So kind of moving on to the written policy here. I'm going to take a drink, popping right into the microphone. So for the written policy, there's really 4 main parts of it. So we've got the review schedule, the evaluation process, the inclusion of the fast track policy that was already in existence, And then we also incorporated a conflict of interest policy. So we've already covered the review schedule with the calendar. So I'm going to be focusing on the evaluation process, fast track policy, and conflict of interest. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm getting over a cold. And I apologize for the interruptions. So for the evaluation process, the way that we kind of tried to break this down was to make every step that we go through a little bit more defined. So I'll just kind of give you the top level headline for each step that we've included in the policy. So for the application step, that really spells out the required criteria that we have for applications. So these are existing tenants, kind of like I already mentioned. They're already in existence. It's now just congregated in one location, and there's been the inclusion of hyperlinks where more information can be found if an applicant was ever interested to find out more. For the steering committee evaluation step, so step 2, it details weighted criteria, and that spells out considerations that the steering committee make when evaluating projects. For step 3, steering committee recommendations, that details how decisions are made and what can be done if a project is not selected for funding. So that would be the appeals piece. Step 4, the policy committee step, outlines how decisions will be made at policy committee meetings, and then the process that will be followed. And then it also details an additional step of regarding conflict of interest, so implementation of a conflict of interest policy, which would involve the chair reading the definition of the conflict of interest policy and then going through and having all commissioners attest that there's no conflict of interest, or at least being able to broach the subject if there is one. Step 5 for the fiscal agent, that just outlines subcontracting with the applicant. The 6th step for post-administrative, that details templates, payments, and reporting. Exceptions, that really identifies projects that don't fit neatly into the above or below $50,000 mark that we kind of separated projects into. This would incorporate non-structural ag and street sweeping. And then appeals details how an applicant can appeal to the policy committee if they don't agree with the steering committee decision. So moving on to the fast track and conflict of interest piece. So again, the fast track policy is something that's already been developed. It's just been included here, and that's line by line text. And then the conflict of interest piece, which is the last part of the document, it's actually word for word Bowser's conflict of interest policy. The only thing that's been added is the implementation step, where the chair would read the definitions into the record and then have commissioners attest. So that is really about it on that. So I wanted to open it up to commissioners for feedback and discussion. So I have a couple guiding questions here. Are there any significant reservations with anything that's been written? What does or doesn't make sense? Is there anything missing? And then what questions are there?
My only question on the policy itself, it has to do with the deadlines and just making sure that everyone understands that there's 2 deadlines per year. And a reminder that you're or the document you're sending out 2 months to 60 days prior, the deadline is a reminder. Correct?
Yes.
Because 2 months is not enough time for people to really get their policies, the projects together, their requests together, get it back to their boards for approval and so forth. So I would really highlight making sure that those 2 deadlines in February and was it May or June? In June. That's basically in February, March, and June. So make sure that those 3 are sent out to everyone so that they understand that we have 3 deadlines in the first half of the year. And then they can start working on those things. And if you don't meet one, they can meet the next one. So I think that needs to be emphasized very wholly. I like the reminders that come out. And so I think that's good. I think the rest of it looks pretty good to me. I do have a comment though on one of the real critical issues that Sunrise River brought forward. And that was a prior concern at the very beginning of putting this thing together. This work, the Lower St. Croix, on watershed one plant. And I can address that now or wait until it's not really part of the policy.
Either way, Mike, you had your hand up. If you have an issue on the policy.
I just have the question of, you mentioned the conflict of interest. Where, I don't know where that arose. Right. What were the objections as far as conflict of interest?
So I can only speak to it as far as I understand it. But from my understanding, during the September 26th meeting, when there were partners not abstaining from voting on their own projects, that was the cause of the concern. That's as far as I understand it. If anybody has a different recollection, please.
We had, we had a hearty conversation as a steering committee, and we said that when we're going to be working, we didn't want to create a situation where policy committee members would have to abstain from voting on something for their own organization, because there is so frequently that we would have projects benefiting multiple organizations. If you had something like the street sweeping funds and everybody who was receiving them had to abstain from voting, well, then nobody would be voting. So the conflict of interest is pretty clear that it's only a conflict of interest if you directly as an individual would be benefiting your business, your family member, your personal property, but you're not needing to abstain just because it is funds going to your public organization. Yeah, which is, as Tom said, standard for Bowser and standard for a lot of the other conflict of interest statements.
And specifically in the middle paragraph on the letter that Sunrise River sent, they made the statement there. Let me try it again. It says,
Starts with future funding.
yeah, future funding and did not require conflicted members of the policy committee to abstain from voting to fund their own organization's projects. So that's what was identified. I think the conflict of interest policy that you pulled up is actually one that was established by the Board of Soil and Water Resources. Am I right there, Tom?
Yes, correct.
So, I think it's I think it's a valid issue for discussion. And so it makes sense that in the context of the letter, that we identify those concerns that Sunrise River had, which you identified the basic three. And then, how do we address those? And one of them would be to adopt then the conflict of interest policy that Bowser set out. And, clearly, you can evaluate conflicts of interest in a lot of ways. From a legal perspective, it's very limited, as Tom pointed out. But, as a Washington County Commissioner, is a project that South Washington Watershed District proposes a conflict of interest for me to vote on. It's a water management organization within Washington County. So where does the conflict exist? And I think that Bowser conflict of interest policy probably provides a good basis for conflicts and for us to identify conflicts if in fact we have some.
It has to be personal, is what you're
Right.
saying, because that's true of any board that we sit on. I couldn't make any decision on the Concord Lake Forest Lake Watershed District Board if that went to that level. Nor could any of the other net members, because they all are connected to a lake of some kind, or the river system or whatever. So it doesn't go down to that minute level. And we all represent our organizations at this partnership. So if we couldn't vote on anything that impacted our area, that wouldn't be fair either, because we're the representatives who represent that particular entity. So yeah, I don't see that as a personal issue for me. And I don't, we could have our lawyers each look at them if we wanted to as entities, we don't mind doing that, getting an opinion from our lawyer, but I just don't think it's going to be an issue.
I mean, personally, I asked the question, but I don't have an issue. I mean, it's the same as I'm a city council person. And if they're gonna do my, if they're doing a street project, does my street. You're telling me I can't vote on it because it's on my street? I mean, I would go with Baldwin.
I mean, we're a young organization and obviously we make adjustments, we fine tune our policies and the things that guide us as some of these issues arise. I think we would be remiss if we didn't address the issues that were raised by Sunrise River. And so I think the discussion today is maybe helping us to guide the organization into the future and provide guidance to each of us individually as to what a conflict may or may not be. So, now, if I was a contractor that was actually planning to bid on the work or do the work on a particular project, you know, I would have a direct conflict there.
I think all of us probably have to sign form that to the state every year. I know I have at least two that I have to.
And there is a conflict of interest piece that's written into the bylaws. This is just kind of serving as an expansion on it, so it's more defined.
I don't have any problem with it. I have a problem with what Comfort Lake is trying to say.
Not Comfort Lake, but
Or not
Sunrise River.
Sunrise River.
Clarification, so projects over $50,000, it's going to need to cover the cost. My question comes back, we're going to be updating contracts for, it used to be the A1, the A3, the things that are in a work plan for Jennifer's time, for Barbara's time. Does the policy committee need those that are written into the approved work plans that are exceeding $50,000 to cover this? And I would be having contracts with Washington Conservation District for Jennifer's time, for Barbara's time, they're going to exceed $50,000. They're in the work plan that was approved by all the government. In my opinion, no, I just want a clarification on this policy. They want those. According to this, I would feel they need. That's what I said.
Their work orders? I don't understand.
Well, so I will have, so as the fiscal agent, you have the finances, and I'll turn around and have a summer agreement with Washington Conservation for Jennifer and time, which will see. There is that this policy be recommended. Or do you feel the policy that Washington Conservation District has to bring that request through this group? I believe, Tom, that I think it's silent on.
I suppose the only way that you might be able to differentiate it is if you're talking like specifically about projects, then this policy applies. But if it's just a contract for services, maybe that is considered differently.
Were there memorandums of agreement signed for those positions with extension?
Washington Conservation District for extension does, and Barbara's a Washington Conservation. And so in the Sunrise River, we go through the sub agreement with Washington Conservation District for Jennifer's time and Barbara's time. They did it.
Excuse me, Barbara is a Washington County employee, is that what you said?
You're a Washington Conservation, Washington as employee.
That is where my office is located.
Her paycheck comes from the Washington Conservation District. Jennifer's paycheck comes from the university.
Is there an agreement then for her to be with the Lower St. Croix exclusively?
So from what I understand, so all of my paychecks come from the Washington Conservation District. And so I work directly with MREP, that is a Washington Conservation District program. So part of my time is paid out of MREP.
I thought MRF was a collaboration.
Yes,
It
but
is.
it's hosted by Washington Conservation District.
That is a different grant that I charge
Yeah.
to.
So,
and then-
so basically, I mean, it just in the time program, all
Right.
of Barbara's time is either getting coded towards MREP or Lower St. Croix.
Right, correct.
MREP funds half
And
her
so
time,
the Lower
St.
St. Croix time that I charge then is fed to an invoice that goes to Chisago.
How
And
much
then-
of your salary is paid by the Lower St. Croix?
Half.
Half
And
of
half.
it?
100% of Jennifer's. Maybe I just want to me, I don't, you guys want it to come through. I still need it. I feel.
I mean, that's my sense, but I mean, the group feel differently about that. I mean, those are ongoing programs that are in our work plan. I think in many ways, you know, we've already made those commitments to extension and to the conservation district, and so they're planning their budgets accordingly and all of that. I mean, it would be disingenuous, I think, to say the least, if we were
Right.
You
Well,
know,
I'm not saying anything about stopping what's happening now,
Yeah.
but we all have to understand how it's funded. Because those of us that fund MRAP are taking that from our local taxpayers. That's part of our levy from our local taxpayers. And if we're serving a broader audience than that, we need to understand that. Because that's not fair to the taxpayers, not just in our area, but any area that collects ad valorem taxes for those things. So
There-
my point
yeah.
is that we need to make sure that if your time for the Lower St. Croix exceeds what we all know it to be, which is 50% funded by this money that's coming to us through Bowser, that we have to make some accommodations with contracts with Washington County. Because
not with Washington County, with Washington Conservation District.
Washington Conservation.
Right.
Yes, because that changes it. And we were hired to do this program, knowing that it probably wouldn't be full-time to start with, but as we grew, and as the program grew, it would be. So I think we have to just make sure that Washington Conservation Service is monitoring that for us.
One thing that I am very conscious and clear of is, generally speaking, when I'm able to bill my time, whether or not I feel that it is a quote unquote more MREP centric activity versus a Lower St. Croix. And there is a lot of overlap, but I actually am pretty careful about where I'm making sure I'm billing my time.
And then everything that is Lower St. Croix, we're tracking, reporting out directly to Craig and to Bowser.
Yes.
So.
I'm wondering if there's something in the document that could exempt, you know, just some, a brief language in there that, so we make that clear, that it's not just a head nod here, that we make that clear. And I would suggest this is not on our agenda today for a decision. Am I correct about that, Tom?
It was just for endorsement.
So, you know, it may be my suggestion, and, you know, share your own opinions on this, but my suggestion would be that some changes may be made to this and then brought back for a final read at our next meeting, and then subject to approval by the board at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would probably say, you know, if we can maybe somehow word it so that staff contracts are exempt from the 50,000 or whatever.
The approved work plan, if it's gone through the
Or-
work plan approval process.
Yeah, something that
Yeah.
If that's Washington angle, is that considering it's project, we classify it as that. These are more corporate contracts. You know, we're all individual entities, so government contracts, you know, government entities. corporations. So yeah, I think that's not part of this discussion in my mind.
So we can work on some clarifying language then to make sure. That's a good catch, Craig. I hadn't thought about that, but.
I haven't either.
Neither had I. I'm funded by it.
That's great.
It looks like Steve Helen does have his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Steve?
Yeah, my only question probably is the $50,000 limit. I understand that.
We're losing you.
Shoot.
Project costs say 150,000. And they're getting all, but does that under the threshold?
So Steve, we lost you quite a bit during your question, and I'm gonna see if I can fill in the gaps, but are you asking why there's a limit at 50,000?
No, I'm asking if if a project costs 150,000 and this group is only contributing 25,000, is it still, is it considered under 50,000 or over?
So it would be considered under 50,000 because it's dealing with the amount that's requested from the Lower St. Croix. So if that amount is more than 50,000, then it would have to go to the policy committee.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a good clarification.
It is a
It's
good
not the total
clarification.
project cost, it's the grant request.
And I think I'll add that in too, just for
Yeah.
clarity's sake.
Yep.
Yeah. Good catch. Other comments about the proposed policy? Hearing none, then if you know, it makes sense then that we would do a second read on this, make those changes, those will get sent out. I don't think it's necessary to send them out early. I think if they get sent out for our agenda, you know, with our agenda for the next meeting, we'd have a chance to review them and then vote on them as a group at that time. So,
Fran?
go ahead.
I think given this past discussion, this most recent one, that comment I had on the letter from Sunrise River, the issue that they brought up, it might have some relevance because adding some language to the policy. One of the main concerns that they had, in my opinion, and it's one that was brought up, like I said, several times before, in building of the one watershed, one family entity or partnership, is that one on liability. So if money goes out to a project, a partnership, all partners are liable for any issue that happens. And so, you know, it can be this trickling lawsuit with all 15 members. And to avoid that, maybe we should ask our attorney, who help with our building of policy, if there's a way to add a codicil to our contract that puts that liability on the entity for the project. So, you know, we have some money coming to Comfort Lake Forest Lake for a project this year. Then that project language would rest that liability for that project on Comfort Lake Forest Lake watershed. And that should be common language for all of our 50 plus, I would say, 50,000 plus projects. I don't know that.
I have a comment on that, but Craig's hand went up, so I'll take him first.
As a fiscal agent, we assume the liability for all of the grant funds, the Lower St. Croix doesn't do about that. But we have put that in there, which by contribution to all. The liability policy. Contract. We are trying to protect ourselves. Most importantly of that.
So it's already there. That protection is already there. So
We
it's,
should talk about this, yes.
oh, with just yours.
Because we're the fiscal agent,
Oh.
because it's not a joint cause entity again. We're the ones that we have to provide the information back to the Water Basin Police Fund grant. Now, if this group went to a different grant format, it became joint cause entity. Right now, grant agreement is here, and we're going to start agreement.
There's no way to add that additional language to make the project holder.
We have that in there, the project
Oh, you
holder
do.
is responsible.
Okay, so you're not left holding that.
Well, and my comment to that is we can add those things, but if somebody files a lawsuit, I mean, you know, they can sue anybody they want, quite honestly, and they will, you know, in many cases attempt that. You know, so even suggesting in language that, you know, someone else is liable, that doesn't totally protect you.
Well, we know anybody can file a lawsuit at any time, whether it has merit.
Exactly. And you know, what's unfortunate with lawsuits is so often, you know, there's payments made and resolved just because it costs more to take it to court or to defend yourself. And people know that, and that's why they, you know, throw a blanket over everything when they sue.
Yeah, and that's one of the big lines, though, between a partnership and an entity, is that the entity becomes the liability.
It it does, but there again, you know, anyone that wants to sue the entity for a project in Washington County likely may sue Washington County or whatever else is involved. I mean, they have that right too. So it doesn't, you know, it doesn't totally protect you from that liability. And, you know, I mean.
Well, we're covered anyway. That's the point. Is that for right now we're covered. Thank you.
So hopefully you know, with that clarification, that addresses to some extent the joint powers collaboration, joint powers entity, which is also an item that we've agreed within this group that we're going to review annually, right? And take a look at the process. There was concern initially about delays in projects and that type of thing because of our inability to bring these before our various boards and get support. That proved to be a non-issue this past year. It, you know, it may be something that becomes more of an issue, and that's why I think it's important that we've agreed as a group to just evaluate that on an annual basis, and we still have that in there. You know, the funding structure, obviously, with policy and how we go about that, and the conflict of interest. Is there anything else within that, you know, the Sunrise River letter or resolution that we need to address as a group? We don't want anyone else leaving.
I think the only issue that you mentioned was they apparently didn't like the fact that we allocated future funds.
And that part's actually been written into the process as well.
So that's, once again, it's not something I have a problem. Something.
Would you go to that paragraph? No.
Sure.
You see a problem with it, no, right.
Sorry, bear with me for 1 second, Jackie.
You go.
Paragraph where it says our liability concerns were taken as partnership vote for
Oh, that's the letter. Yeah.
We're looking at the policy itself.
We
While
do have
Tom's
in
looking
there,
for
I
that, I'm
swear.
gonna just draw your attention to
Oh, it's in a
the
footnote, that's why. I'm
for the
sorry.
resolve on the resolution, the second to the last resolve, where it says that be it further resolved that Sunrise River Water Management Organization Board supports the implementation of the Lower St. Croix Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan and continues to adopt the plan as a guidance document. I just think that's an important statement. You know, they are supportive of what's going on here. It should be made known of that.
Yeah, I might be remembering a previous draft that we had and taking that language out just to make it. Greg, do you recall, did we have that in and then we took it out? Okay.
That was what my board was going on with.
We'll make sure I get the next.
Yeah.
Because it definitely wasn't earlier.
I did not find it, but I will make a note to include that.
We'll make sure that we, in the review of the draft before it comes back, that language is in there and that it's highlighted. So,
Future funding.
Yeah.
So it's still in.
well, we believe it is,
Yeah.
but they're not able to find it right.
So that's
Well,
fine.
just again, just to bring out one of the points that we talked about at the time, of Washington, South Washington. Watershed districts plan on a multi-year basis. And it's much like the bigger projects, counties and city townships, road projects, so forth. you have to plan for those couple of years in advance. And in our case, in order to get money from Bowser to help supplement those big projects, we can't not start the project until we have the funding in place. And so that means that you might be 2 to 3 years out before you need that funding. So we've got to, as a partnership, figure out some way to accommodate for that plan. We have a pretty good idea of what kind of money we're going to get in the next 3 to 5 years anyway. And that, is what the formula will be. And both of that comes from the Twin Cities, or the metro, the metro watershed, sourcing. And that's all gets dumped into the pool. But it's a considerable amount, and it's not just watersheds, it's cities and townships, those that might be left, that still can apply to these funds on their own as well. So we have to get that.
And Jackie, I did find it. I'm sorry. It just took me a minute. So it's under step 2, steering committee evaluation. So numbers 3 and 4, they're considerations, not requirements. So projects would be given priority that can use, that the project takes place in the current grant cycle, and then the project will utilize funds that are on the cusp of expiration. So basically, it's weighting it towards the funding that's available in the current grant cycle, and that the project can take place now rather than in 2 years.
Oh dear, oh, that's not this at all yet. I'm not seeing that at all yet. You said it's number 2?
Yes, step 2, steering committee evaluation, numbers 3 and 4.
Yeah, well, that just goes out for the projects.
So these aren't requirements, these are considerations. This would just weight a project more heavily if it can use those funds quicker and it takes place in the current grant cycle.
Yeah, but even that's gonna bump them out. I mean, right now, there's not a lot of activity, but there's going, and we've got existing plans. This money would have been part of the competitive grant program, we're shifting over to this one watershed, one plan, this version. And so any entity, city or watershed that has a multi-year plan would not be highly.
So they are weighted in order. So the very first consideration is how the project scores. So that's going to be based on its merit in terms of pollutant reduction, or whatever other score sheet that it needs to apply to. And then the last things that you would consider was if you could take place in the current grant cycle, or the project utilizes funds that are about to expire. So they're considerations, when it's not a hard and fast rule. It's more of something that's guidelines.
That's just sort of common sense as far as being on the cusp of expiration. Obviously, you want to fund projects and then when it's that close, but the other one, 3, I think is some round up multi-year project.
And a couple of comments that we had during the steering committee and finance meeting. We talked about the need, can we put these in work plans? We're doing, the project's over $50,000 and we become one. But I anticipated we're going to, if we have a bunch of applications coming in, let's say we have 3, 4, let's say water district, they see the amount of dollars we have, we're going to work. Or the joint clean water. I think it's important for the group to realize that the way we were doing things 6 months ago, when we didn't have a calendar, I think this calendar is going to help us. It's also, I recall, it's going to be really documented. The current grants I'm working. So I see your concern, Jackie, but I do think it'll work well for us. We're going to this call, we might get 0, we might get 4 big projects from water districts. That's going to help us a lot to come back to this board and say, here's the response. How we want to fund these. And we're not so much allocating huge allocations, but we're going to write those in work plans. Do think that'll help clarify a lot.
Any other thoughts?
Any other thoughts on this?
Is there a chat?
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, never mind. It's probably the one I should have read first.
Okay, very good. We'll make some of the changes that have been suggested here in a draft format for you to review as part of your next meeting packet, and then look for possible approval of the policy then. Oh, I lost my agenda here. What's next on the agenda?
I think that all is left is to adjourn.
Number 8.
Yeah, you're right. Is our next meeting scheduled?
Our next meeting is going to be on Monday, April 24th. Same timing, 4 till 6 p.m. And we will try to secure this room to have in the same location. And I will bring the owl so that everybody online and in person can see one another. Yep, if you are wanting to mark your calendars out, then July 24th would be the next meeting after that.
And Andy, I did check on the room here, but we want to book out.
Yeah, I seem to remember that we always had to kind of wait. And then the final meeting of the year will be on October 25th.
And some of the programming and outreach activities, Jennifer, are you sending out notices on those? Are those coming through?
And so we've been doing it in a couple different ways, and Jen and I have been talking about this well. So Angie puts together a monthly MREP Lower St. Croix email, which I include a lot of the Lower St. Croix updates and Jennifer's updates. I believe everybody on this PC committee is on that.
Everybody
Email
should be
list?
getting those, and people who are new to the policy committee, I have added you, so you'll start getting them in February.
Correct. Jen and I are also talking about, because we are trying to build up our farmer networking contact lists, and so there will be times where we will send out separate updates, and those we can include you all on too if you are interested in seeing.
You know, and those outreach opportunities are good things for the policy committee members or even alternates to attend, just to
Absolutely.
be aware of what's going on, the direction.
Yeah, and I would say if anyone has an opportunity to see Angie or Barbara, them make a presentation, they're very enthusiastic, very knowledgeable. It's really a great time to sit and listen and get educated. So I'd recommend it.
Thanks, Mike.
You know, I haven't seen Jen before as far as her presentation. I'm sure she's just as enthusiastic.
Well, in Hastings on Wednesday this week, we have about between 20-25 farmers coming to Denmark Township for a meeting to listen about soil health, and we also have a seed dealer coming in from the border of
Your
Minnesota and
numbers
Iowa.
just jumped up, hey?
Yeah, she did some big grunt work last week and reached out to people and started nailing them down. So it's gonna be a fun time, but that's this Wednesday.
So we just encourage you to follow those reports, and if there's some opportunity for you to attend some of those things, just to see what's going on. Hopefully, for those of you that are new to the policy committee, we didn't overwhelm you with information. So do we have any kind of a basic primer or something like that?
Actually, I have been working on that and updating it with the 2022 numbers. And so, yeah, be looking for
Get some
for sure to
information,
come out.
because for those of you that weren't with us at the ground level, you know, this has got to be a lot to absorb and understand as to what's going on. But you know, but we certainly welcome you and appreciate your engagement with us today, and then hopefully continue to be involved with the policy committee here.
Would someone be so inclined to just go through the dates we're meeting again?
Yes. We are meeting on April 24th. We are meeting on July 20th. And we are meeting on October 23rd.
So July what?
July 24th.
Okay,
Those are all Mondays,
Yep, it's
And-
always 4 to 6 p.m.
and we're all from 4 to 6 p.m. and we're hoping to secure the Wyoming Library here for each of those meetings.
okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other business that we need to take care of today? Mike congratulated me or whatever. He said, I kind of like the fact that you're chairing because you get us out by 6 o'clock. We don't want to belabor anything. We want to make sure we cover the business we have.
Well, this is Barb from Voucher, and I haven't been with you guys for a while because the other watersheds were developing their plans. So sorry I've been absent, but it's so exciting to hear everything that you're all doing. And this is just such a great partnership. I just want to applaud you and all your staff for all the work you've been doing just on your own governance and on projects and education and everything. So like you're a shining star, and I take all your good examples and I bring them around the state. So I just want to applaud you for a minute here.
Well, and the other side of that obviously is the significant funding that we're managing and we're being, able to implement projects here that are helping the Lower St. Croix. So, that's good news, and share that with other groups that are trying to establish their entities and the ability to do some good work. So, and if they need to know more, they can talk to Matt Moore, right? He's probably fallen asleep here. Any other business? Otherwise, I'll call our meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. And
I'm still here, Commissioner. I will answer any question.
All right. Good night, everybody. I'll see you all next time. Sorry.
Thank you all. We'll see ya.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I can't. I'll just write it down.